What is this again? Oh my god.
Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Indricotherium.
Spoiler alert, the title is 100% clickbait. No exceptions.
The Indricotherium was the biggest creature you've never heard of.
It's now called HarrisTsangYT, and I've heard of it a bazillion years ago.
The remains of this enormous creature were found early in the 20th century, and it's been a controversial topic among paleontologists ever since. No one has even agreed on what to call it, with some still referring to it as the Paraceratherium.
Because most of them do.
Whatever you choose to call it, this creature was a giant mammal, the largest terrestrial mammal that ever walked the face of the Earth.
So you haven't heard of Paleoloxodon before?
It was so big that its bones could have easily been mistaken for some of the biggest dinosaur bones in the world.
How? This thing lived in the Oligocene. Non-avian dinosaurs went extinct over 30 million years prior to the beginning of the existence of the Paraceratherium.
Even though the Indricotherium was a mammal with no relation to dinosaurs, it was almost the same size as some of the biggest sauropod dinosaurs.
The Paraceratherium is just 15 to 20 tons in mass. That is smaller than a Diplodocus, which isn't even in the top 20.
Which were the biggest dinos that ever existed. The Indricotherium was an ancestor of the modern rhinoceros. It looked like a mix between a rhino, an elephant, and a brontosaurus. It had a very long neck, just like you'd expect with a diplodocus
But look at its proportions.
or a brachiosaurus. But then its legs were thin and it only had 3 toes on its feet. These stumps were like the feet of elephants, only way bigger. It's believed it was an herbivore.
Like if your toddler audience doesn't know that the Paraceratherium is an herbivore.
Though it didn't have a trunk. Instead, it had a prehensile upper lip that allowed it to grab leaves from trees. The size of this monster
Why do you have to call it a monster? Come on.
is hard to imagine. It was 40 feet long and 20 tons.
40 feet long. That is probably the most ridiculous and worst estimate of Paraceratherium I've ever seen.
And yet, that's only a guess. Because of the scant fossil record, archaeologists can't be sure of their size. Some of these beasts may have been larger, others may have been a bit smaller. They only lived for a brief time during the Oligocene period.
You call 11 million years a brief time?
Between 33 and 23 million years ago.
34 to 23 million years ago, so this mistake is forgivable.
They also only lived in Asia,
Also the Balkans.
roaming the plains on their massive legs and munching on plants. Number 9. The Spinosaurus.
Spinosaurus right away? Okay.
The Spinosaurus was the biggest
This model is probably most accurate that they have done, but still it is not good.
carnivorous dinosaur. End of discussion. It was positively massive, measuring 50 feet long
Now it is just around 46 feet long, maybe just 44, 43.
and weighing roughly 7.5 tons.
Okay, that's a bit too big. Spinosaurus is around 7 tons.
It didn't weigh as much as some others, but its length and its weight together make it the largest that paleontologists know about.
Dinosaur size is determined by mass.
The first specimens of this prehistoric demon
Prehistoric demon. This is probably the worst way to describe a dinosaur that I've ever heard of.
were found in western Egypt in 1910. Over a century later, researchers still can't agree on the specifics of the Spinosaurus. Nobody is sure if it was semi-aquatic or fully terrestrial.
It has to be semi-aquatic. Spinosaurus being fully terrestrial doesn't make sense.
Because we know the Spinosaurus lived in coastal areas, and because of its long snout, we know its diet consisted mostly of seafood. But scientists don't know if it waded into the water and hunted prehistoric crocodiles in the shallows, or if it was able to submerge its entire body and swim like a reptile.
This is such a goofy animation, and I personally go for the former.
The Spinosaurus lived 99 million years ago in North Africa. It was almost like a hybrid between the Tyrannosaurus rex and a real-life dragon.
What do you get when you hybridize T-Rex and a dragon? That is right, hybrid of T-Rex dragon that doesn't look like a Spinosaurus one bit.
It was a mammoth dinosaur, even larger than the legendary Giganotosaurus.
Giganotosaurus or Giganotosaurus. Giganotosaurus is still bigger than the Spinosaurus. It might have been shorter, but it is still bigger.
With its narrow skull measuring 6 feet in length. Its skull happened to be shaped similar to the skull of a giant crocodile. The Spinosaurus is the only dinosaur we know about that lived on land, but primarily feasted on seafood.
It's like you haven't heard of a baryonyx before.
It's impossible to say who would have won in a battle, the Spinosaurus or the T-Rex.
What in the world is that T-Rex model? It looks more like a raptor from JP than a T-Rex. Also, the T-Rex would have won even in shallow waters.
However, chances are it would have been the
How did the Spino extend its neck like that to the point where it's basically just a sauropod or an Elasmosaurus?
Spino. The Spinosaurus had one major advantage. It had fully functioning arms.
Yes, it had very good arms, but the T-Rex can still withstand a lot of damage.
Unlike the T-Rex's tiny stubs.
Stop making fun of the T-Rex's tiny arms. They are still useful.
It was also bigger and meaner.
What do you mean meaner? It does not have the intelligence of an elephant. How could it be meaner if it isn't even self-aware?
Which in the animal kingdom means a lot. Who do you think would win in a fight? The Spinosaurus or the T-Rex? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already.
I think we all know who is the rightful king of the dinosaurs.
Number 8. Patagotitan majorum. The biggest dinosaurs in the world are all different species of Titanosaur.
Hold on, is that the Giganotosaurus and the Titanosaurus from Ark?
The Titanosaur is a family of armored sauropods.
Okay, to be fair, some sauropods, like the Ampelosaurus, had osteoderms
that spread to every single continent on the planet during the Cretaceous period. Some Titanosaurs were measly pipsqueaks like the Saltasaurus, who only weighed 10 tons.
10 tons is still too big for Saltasaurus. It probably had a mass of around 2.5 tons.
But by the time they reached their evolutionary peak 100 million years ago, these things were the closest thing to real giants. Scientists can't agree on which Titanosaur was the biggest, since fossil evidence is rare.
Now, there is a creature known as Brachiosaurus, which is estimated to have a mass of around 110 to 170 tons, with a likely estimate around 110 to 130 tons. However, in 2017, while transporting fossils to a museum geological survey of India, the fossils start to disintegrate and then they no longer existed. So for now, most can confirm that the Argentinosaurus is the largest dinosaur to have ever lived, and also the largest land animal.
But there are some major contenders. The first is Maximo. Patagotitan majorum could be the largest dinosaur that scientists have ever found. It was a long-necked plant eater that dominated the landscape of Patagonia in Argentina. Its nickname in Spanish, Maximo, translates to maximum. In other words, it's the maximum dinosaur. Its long neck and massive tail give it a full length of 122 feet.
More nearer estimates would say that the Patagotitan wouldn't even reach 30 meters in length.
That makes it the biggest animal that ever lived.
Dinosaur size is determined by mass, not length. Also, this is a very, very long Megalodon and Mosasaurus, especially in comparison to the Argentinosaurus. And look at the Sarcosuchus being just too long as well.
Even bigger than the blue whale.
Blue whale is the largest animal to have ever lived.
It weighed 70 tons.
Correction, 56 tons, which doesn't even make it into the top 5.
Which is roughly the same weight as 10 African elephants. The fossils of this titan were officially described in 2017 by scientists who named the animal. The bones were uncovered in the Patagonian desert region in Argentina when a rancher just stumbled over it. The bone was just sticking out from the ground and the rancher tripped over it. Imagine going for a walk in your backyard and tripping over the femur of the largest thing that ever existed.
Oh, so we're just gonna let the blue whale cry in the corner.
What would you do? Let me know in the comments. Number 7. The blue whale.
Blue whale should be number 1.
The biggest animal alive on our planet right now is the blue whale.
It is not only the biggest animal alive, it is the biggest animal to have ever existed.
It's also the biggest animal that ever lived. The blue whale, even though it averages about 90 feet, has been estimated to reach lengths between 120 and 140 feet.
Even for a blue whale, these estimates are ridiculous.
That's longer than any Titanosaur of the dinosaur age. The biggest Titanosaur may have reached 100 tons.
Look, I know that Brachiosaurus exists, but it is very fragmentary, and it's not even fragmentary. The fossils are just gone.
And even that's a stretch. The blue whale can weigh up to 155 tons.
Some put it even higher.
There is absolutely nothing that has ever evolved on our planet that can compare to the size of the blue whale. The blue whale is big enough to fit 40 elephants.
Are you talking about its volume? And why are the elephants so tiny?
30 T-Rexes,
You showed Gorgosaurus from Walking with Dinosaurs 3D.
or 2,670 average humans. What a lot of people don't realize is that the blue whale wasn't always so large. 48 million years ago, it evolved from a four-legged mammal that slipped into the ocean and started swimming. Its ancestor was the Pakicetus, a small mammal only about 4 or 5 feet long. It foraged in streams as it became adapted to life in the water. About 10 million years later, the Pakicetus had evolved into the fully aquatic Dorodon, which was about 12 feet long.
It's actually around 16 feet long.
This evolution continued until today, with the blue whale now the biggest living creature in existence.
Also the biggest creature to have ever existed.
Number 6. The African bush elephant.
So we're just gonna put the African bush elephant above the blue whale and pretend like nothing had ever happened.
The blue whale is the biggest thing in the ocean, and the African bush elephant is the biggest animal on land.
The biggest living animal on land. Sure, but have you heard of Argentinosaurus before? Biggest terrestrial animal to have ever lived.
It isn't nearly as impressive as some of the wacky creatures that came before it millions of years ago.
Wacky creatures. Also, not gonna lie, this Triceratops looks kinda soulless to me.
But it is the last of the giants still living, with adult bush elephants reaching 24 feet in length.
The elephant in this posture is naturally longer. So you should take this 7.3 meters one with a grain of salt.
And standing 13 feet tall.
Also, this is only for bulls because cows are shorter and smaller and shorter.
Each one weighs roughly 11 tons, and they spend the majority of their time foraging. Just like so many giants of the past, elephants are herbivores.
Again, you don't have to tell this universally known fact to your 2-year-old audience.
They eat grass, leaves, fruit, and whatever foliage they can find. They consume about 350 pounds of plant matter every day. The African bush elephant is special for a lot more reasons than just its intense size.
Special according to a baby.
Other than human beings, African elephants live longer than any other mammal. They have a lifespan in the wild of 70 years. Elephant herds are also led by the matriarch, the eldest female. These wise animals form close-knit communities ruled by elephant queens. Adult males almost never join herds and spend their lives roaming around in the wild, fairly cranky since nobody wants to hang out with them. Have you ever seen an African bush elephant in person?
Why did you have to ask that? Also, this person is incredibly tiny.
Let me know in the comments. Number 5. Hatsukotteryx.
The fact that they put Hatsukotteryx above the likes of the blue whale and the African bush elephant just doesn't sit right with me. I know it is the largest pterosaur, but its size couldn't even compare to that of an African bush elephant. Also, the label of Transylvania is way too far to the right.
Millions of years before Transylvania was home to Count Dracula, it was home to what may have been the biggest flying reptile that ever existed. It was a giant pterosaur called Hatsukotteryx, and it had a taste for dinosaur meat.
It was probably a terrestrially foraging generalist predator.
When this thing was still alive during the Cretaceous, right before the extinction of the dinosaurs,
Extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are still around, but are only in the form of avians, aka birds.
it was like a giraffe with wings. The flying death machine
Is that how the mainstream calls the Hatsukotteryx nowadays? A flying death machine?
was so big that when paleontologists found its remains in the early 1990s, they thought it was some kind of weird-looking tyrannosaur. But no, it was a real aerial wonder with a wingspan of 40 feet across.
For current estimates, it's around 33 to 36 feet across.
That is truly incredible and kind of hard to believe. The Hatsukotteryx's wings were so big, you could have built a small cabin on its back.
That is assuming that the Hatsukotteryx's muscles, fibers, whatever, are made of concrete.
Its skull alone was 10 feet long, and although scientists have yet to find an example of its jaw, they think it may have had the longest jaw of any terrestrial tetrapod.
The thing about the Hatsukotteryx is that its beak is quite blunt, so maybe the Quetzalcoatlus could take that title.
There is still a lot of debate over how the dragon of Transylvania kept itself fed, because it really was a dragon in terms of size, just without the fire breathing.
Okay, it is an animal.
Scientists think it may have been a scavenger, although that might not be the case.
This does not look like a Hatsukotteryx to me.
It may have fed kind of like a pelican by scooping food into its mouth. But the most popular theory is that it was a terrestrial stalker, meaning it hunted on land instead of in the sky. It likely ran around, pecking things to death and chomping their bones, then flying up to its nest high in the mountains. Number 4. Megalodon versus Mosasaurus.
So you're just going to slap both of them together in the same number.
The Mosasaurus was one of the biggest predators the ocean has ever seen.
Hold up, this clip is very familiar. It has to be reused.
It grew to a shocking length of 59 feet,
It is just around 42 feet.
making it fairly comparable to the average Megalodon. The Megalodon was another fierce aquatic predator that ruled the oceans until fairly recently. The Megalodon only went extinct about 3 million years ago. The Mosasaurus 50 million years before that.
So you're saying that the Mosasaurus went extinct 53 million years ago, which is just absolutely insane, because if it went extinct 53 million years ago, we would have true evidence of Mosasaurus living after the KPG extinction event.
But which one of these prehistoric monstrosities was the most terrifying?
Prehistoric monstrosities. What are you doing?
Or maybe an even more exciting question, which one would win in a fight?
Megalodon 100%. It's not even fair.
The Mosasaurus had 50 conical teeth that were long and tapered, designed to go through flesh like a bullet. Their jaws were also double-hinged, allowing them to swallow their prey whole, just like snakes.
Normally, I don't really complain about Jurassic Park stuff anymore, but Mosasaurus in Jurassic World is incredibly oversized, too long, too big.
The Mosasaurus didn't take bites out of its meals, it gobbled them whole. It mainly ate things like fish, turtles, smaller versions of itself, and large ammonites.
Smaller versions of itself. I think you meant smaller Mosasaurs.
It also had a taste for squid. At the end of the day, the Mosasaurus was a nearly 60-foot-long reptile with paddle-shaped limbs similar to the Loch Ness Monster.
I already said it's wrong. I don't have to say it again.
The Megalodon was a different beast altogether. It was like a great white shark injected full of radioactive waste and turned into a monster.
Stop calling everything a monster for dup's sake.
The Megalodon had 5 rows of 276 teeth like razors. Rather than swallowing its prey, the Megalodon chewed its victims and shook them like ragdoll.
It feels like the Megalodon that's getting bitten has blue blood, although it could be just its tongue.
It was an ambush hunter and would have grabbed its prey inside its massive jaws, broken bones and torn skin, and shook them to death. The maximum length of the Megalodon was about 65 feet. It was the biggest shark that ever lived. Although the Megalodon and the Mosasaurus were close in size, both apex predators and both seriously mean.
Seriously mean. Also, look at this Mosasaurus. It looks like it's from a video game.
There could only be one winner. In a hypothetical fight, the sheer bulk of the Megalodon and its powerful jaws would make quick work of the giant reptile.
As if it isn't obvious already.
Do you agree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 3. Sarcosuchus Imperator.
Again, we're just gonna put the Sarcosuchus above the likes of Megalodon and pretend that nothing had ever happened.
Speaking of giant reptiles, let's take a look at what was likely the biggest crocodile that ever existed.
It is not a crocodile. I've said it a gazillion times already.
It's the super croc.
Bruh.
Scientifically known as the Sarcosuchus Imperator. It was significantly larger than any modern crocodile in existence. For a quick size comparison, modern saltwater crocodiles grow to be somewhere around 18 feet. They would have looked like toddlers next to the monumental super croc.
Still can't believe you even had the audacity to call the Sarcosuchus a super croc.
Which could reach lengths of over 36 feet.
No, it probably reached just 31 feet.
It wasn't the only giant crocodile either. Dr. Mark Young, a paleontologist at the University of Edinburgh, says there were lots of big crocodilians.
Why did you use this art out of every art that you could have possibly used?
The Deinosuchus
Dinosuchus, not Deinosuchus. Also, this doesn't look like a Deinosuchus.
in the late Cretaceous was close in size to the Sarcosuchus. There were also giant caimans living in the Amazon that were behemoths compared to the caimans there now. However, these all went extinct about 5 million years ago. Mark also says that during the time of the Sarcosuchus, about 113 million years ago, there were marine crocodiles.
Now you're just dragging on the entire video for the money.
These were crocodiles who didn't hang out in rivers and on swampy coastlines, but dwelled deep in the ocean. Mark says these ocean crocodiles were at least the same size as the super croc, maybe even bigger.
I don't see anything.
We just don't have enough evidence to say for certain. Number 2. Argentinosaurus. Before the discovery of Maximo, Argentina was home to another monumental beast dubbed the biggest dinosaur ever.
Because it is.
In 1987, paleontologists uncovered the buried remains of the Argentinosaurus. It was a member of the Titanosaur family and shocked scientists around the world with its incredible size. Although estimates do vary, most reconstructions place the dinosaur at 85 feet long.
Actually, it is longer than that. It's around 98 to 115 feet long, which is actually a rather broad estimate. It is closer to around 108 to 109 feet long in most cases. Actually, the specimen MLP DP46 VII-21-3 suggests that it's around 110 feet
and 75 tons.
It is an acceptable estimate, but some suggest that it's even bigger, like the specimen MLP DP46 VII-21-3, based on a partial femur. It is around 81.8 to 84 tons in mass.
That maximum guess is a total length of 100 feet.
There are guesses even longer than that,
and 100 tons,
which for current paleontology is not a great estimate.
At the time, it was the biggest dinosaur ever discovered. The newly found Maximo beats the Argentinosaurus by at least 22 feet, maybe more. Still, the Argentinosaurus deserves a spot on the list simply for being the biggest for so long. This gigantic dinosaur had a top speed of 5 miles an hour, which is pretty incredible.
5 miles per hour. Okay, to be fair, it can cause some destruction with its speed.
That's faster than a 747 jet plane while taxiing. Just try to imagine the collateral damage inflicted by a beast with these proportions steamrolling through the forest. A sudden stampede could have easily caused a small extinction event. But did the Argentinosaurus have any predators? Oddly enough, yes. Scientists have found the bones of the Giganotosaurus.
No, it did not hunt the Argentinosaurus because they lived in different formations. I think you meant something like the Mosasaurus.
Near scattered remains of the Argentinosaurus. It could just be that one of the biggest predators of all time hunted one of the biggest plant eaters of all time, maybe even in packs.
It did not hunt in packs. Even Planet Dinosaur depicted the Mosasaurus hunting Argentinosaurus in loose gangs.
Like huge reptilian wolves. Number 1. Giganotosaurus.
Speaking of course there is no T-Rex over here.
The Giganotosaurus was at least 45 feet long from the tip of its nose to the end of its tail.
It is just 41 feet long.
In terms of height, it was almost 20 feet tall.
Do you think the Giganotosaurus is Slender Man? It is not that tall. At the head, it's just around 4 meters tall.
These are all rough guesses put forth by scientists, but the important thing to know is that the Giganotosaurus,
of course, you're using the Giganotosaurus from Ark,
was huge. It weighed anywhere between 5 and 10 tons and was so big it was the only thing capable of bullying the biggest sauropods of the Cretaceous.
It is at 8 tons in mass. So, okay, so if I were to pit this thing against an Argentinosaurus, one just wouldn't be enough. A few would still probably not be enough, although it'd probably be enough to tear the Argentinosaurus' flesh and get away, even though Argentinosaurus could very well crush one of them.
From 93 to 89 million years ago,
it lived 99.6 to 95 million years ago.
The Giganotosaurus rampaged across South America. It was in the top 3 of the biggest known terrestrial carnivores. It was about 6 feet longer than the T-Rex, and most likely heavier too.
Okay, so to be fair, it is very slightly longer than the T-Rex, although the T-Rex is bigger.
But it was smaller than the mighty Spinosaurus.
You're only just appeasing to the 2-year-old Spino fans at this point.
Between these 3 creatures, the Cretaceous would have been a terrifying time to be alive, at least as a human. If you were a Giganotosaurus, life probably wasn't that bad. Nobody tried to eat you, and you were big enough to eat anyone who tried. But there was a downside to being a giant reptile with teeth like oversized ice picks. Scientists have found the Giganotosaurus had a brain even smaller than the T-Rex. The Tyrannosaurus rex is famous for having a brain the size of a walnut, despite its immense size. But the Giganotosaurus's brain was even smaller, and for some reason, shaped like a banana.
That is the end of the video. As always, it is not a good video, so thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you all in the next one.